Well, hi and welcome. A term that you will be familiar with is a camera raw file. But what does it actually mean? Okay, let's have a look. A camera raw file contains unprocessed, uncompressed grayscale picture data from a digital camera's image sensor. And along with this comes information on how the image was captured, and this is in the form of metadata. So at this stage, a camera raw, it isn't actually an image. So we need something to be able to convert this data, which is basically zeros and ones, into an image that we can see. Now, Photoshop Camera Raw software has the ability to interpret the camera raw file using information about the camera from the image's metadata to construct and to process a colour image. Think of a camera raw file as your photo negative. You can reprocess the file at any time, achieving the results that you want by making adjustments for white balance, tonal range, contrast, colour saturation and sharpening. Now, when you adjust a camera raw image, the original camera raw data is preserved. It can't be edited. Adjustments are stored as metadata in an accompanying sidecar file, in a database, or in the file itself, as is the case with the DNG format. Now, when you shoot JPEG files with your camera, the camera automatically processes the JPEG file to enhance it, and it actually does some serious compression on the image. And you generally have little control on how this processing happens. Now, shooting camera raw images with your camera gives you greater control than shooting JPEG images, because the camera raw does not lock you into processing done by the camera. You can still edit JPEG and TIFF images in camera raw, but you will be editing pixels that have already been processed by the camera. So while you've got the advantage of a simplified workflow with camera raw, you won't have the same latitude for correction that you have when you process a full camera raw image. Basically, you've got more stuff, so it gives you a lot more wiggle room when you're editing. So let's dig a little bit deeper. My name's Ken Fisher and this is LiveLink Training. Now, in this video we're going to be looking at the basics of shooting and processing in camera raw. Now, don't forget, if you're a fan of the printed page, there is a free ebook to accompany the video. Just click on the link in the More section under the video to download it. Okay, let's dig in. Let's first take a look at what a raw file is, and then we can move on to how we process it. Now, by default, most digital cameras process and compress photos as JPEG files immediately after capturing the image. Now, this processing step is out of your control, as it's set by the camera manufacturers. Finally, the file is subject to JPEG compression, which significantly reduces the file size and the quality of your image. The result is an efficiently processed JPEG image. Now, just imagine that your image is made up of Smarties. Now, that's a nice thought for me. Your camera makes decisions, and what it actually does is it throws away Smarties. It throws away parts of your images. It looks and says, well, I've got plenty of them black ones, so I'll chuck some of them away. And so you end up with a smaller, lower quality image. And you can't stop it doing it. Now, the camera raw image, by comparison, is an unprocessed photograph. It's all the information captured with the digital camera. It contains all the raw data, straight from the sensor, with no processing done whatsoever. So going back to the Smarties, we keep them all, and it's up to the individual photographer to process the image as he or she sees fit, to adjust settings like exposure, white balance and saturation after the image has been captured, instead of applying lossy JPEG compression, which reduces the image quality. Raw mode saves files in a lossless compressed format. Now, while JPEG images are suitable for most purposes, professional photographers and photography enthusiasts prefer more control over how each image is processed. Therefore, many cameras now have the ability to shoot in RAW instead, or as well as JPEG. Now, there is a downside. Because camera RAW files are uncompressed, they take up more space than the typical JPEG image. In fact, RAW files often take about 5 to 10 times more disk space for each image captured. So you want to have a large memory card on your camera if you plan to shoot in RAW. Now the raw file itself is actually, it's not an image, it's data, it's zeros and ones that the camera has recorded. So it does need software to process it. And this is where Adobe Camera Raw comes in. It will allow us to visualize and process an image how we as the photographer want, and then output in a suitable format such as JPEG, PNG or TIFF. Now whenever you open up a RAW file, it will open up into Camera Raw automatically because, as I said earlier, RAW files have to be processed before you can work on them in Photoshop. Let's take a look. Now I'm just going to open up Bridge, and here I've got an image that we're going to be working on. So I'm going to right click in the thumbnail and I'm going to select Open in Camera Raw. And here it is, it brings it in. Now here we've got a host of panels here. I'm not going to be going into them all today, just a couple of them. But this is the basic panel, which we'll be using in a moment. And these are all global adjustments. And up here at the top, we've got the tools. And these are more localized adjustments we can use. Okay. So first thing I need to address is that it's a little bit wonky. That horizon's a little bit wonky. So let's address that with the straighten tool. I'll click on the straighten tool and I know it's a bit hazy, but I'll click and drag somewhere like that and let go, and then double click to straighten the horizon. Okay, now the workflow basically is working from top to bottom, from top down. So we've got the white balance. We can change the white balance to auto or daylight or any of the ones that you've got on the camera, because this is a Camera Raw file. So basically the white balance isn't baked into the image, it just sits above it like a filter. I'll take that back to as shot because I think it's not bad. Now it's a little bit peely-wally, it's a little bit pasty. So what we'll do is we'll drop the exposure a little bit. That's not bad. Now it does tend to wash things out a little bit when you have quite big moves with the exposure, so we'll combat that with a little bit of a contrast boost. The highlights, let's see what we can do. We've nothing much we can do with them, but if we drop that down, it'll just give us a little bit more detail in the sky, but there's no clouds or anything, so it's not going to do much. And then the shadows, it's a little bit dark, so let's pull the shadows out a little bit just to lighten it up. Looking a bit better. Now the white and the black point, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold the Alt key down and click on the white slider, and I'll just drag it out until it starts to clip. And by clipping I mean that you can see those little colours appearing. That's when it's starting clipping, and something like that. And then I'll do the same with the black slider, hold the Alt key down, click and drag until I can see some of the colours starting to come through, and this means it's just starting to clip in those channels. And I'll let go, and what that's going to do, that's just going to make sure that I've got a complete spread of tones. It's going to spread things out from the shadows through to the highlights. I think you can see that's a little bit more punchy. Now I have got a bit of clipping, but I'm not too concerned about that. If I switch the clipping indicator on, you can see. So let's see if we can get rid of that. So you can see this is the area that's being clipped. So let's see if we can get rid of that with a highlight. That works a little bit. Let's try the whites. That's completely gone. So that's got rid of all the clipping for us now. And the image is looking a lot better. Now clarity, I love clarity. Clarity is mid-tone contrast. And what it's doing is it's looking for edges in the mid-tones, and it's trying to enhance them by making them darker on one side and lighter on the other side. So if you pull a lot of clarity in, it'll turn it into what looks like a bit of a HDR image. I'll just do that. Or you can do it the other way and make it really soft and ethereal looking. I just like a little bit of clarity just to give it a little bit of punch. And then I like a bit of vibration. And this is a combination of vibrance and saturation. Now saturation, basically it's a linear response. What it does is it saturates all the colours whether they're saturated or not. So if I pull the saturation right over, you'll see that it does quite, it goes a bit nuclear. So I do like a little bit of saturation, and then vibrance is a non-linear response, and that means it looks at the image, and if there's a saturated colour it tries to leave it alone, and it just tries to boost the colours that are not as saturated, and it does give you just a little bit more of a subtle effect. So I'm just going to pull them out because it was a nice day, and I'm still getting a little bit of clipping, but I'm going to eventually, I think, live with that because it's only a small piece. I'm okay with that. That's pretty cool. Right, now what else can we do? Well, I'm going to go into the HSL and grayscale panel. And on this we've got some tabs. We've got a hue tab, which is the colour. We've got a saturation tab, and we've got a luminance tab. Now we'll start with luminance. Now luminance allows us to attack each of these colour ranges individually from a darkness and lightness point of view. So you can see on the slider here we've got the reds go to really dark reds to light greys. So if I want to enhance the reds a little bit, I can basically move that. Now you'll see the pavilion sign there, it goes darker. Well, okay, I don't want it too dark, so I'll leave it there. Let's have a look if there's any oranges. Well, there's obviously some oranges in the building, so I'll just pull that down a little bit to darken it up a little bit. Let's see if there's any yellows. Well, yeah, the orange and the yellows tend to go together, so I'll just pull that down a little bit as well. Okay, now the saturation. Well, this is, well, how vibrant is the colour. So again, I can move to the right to go more saturated, to the left to go less saturated. So the reds, let's see if we can just boost that Pavilion Theatre sign a little bit. Or what about the oranges? That's actually the text. Yeah, I can pull that out a little bit. And the yellows. Well, I think the yellows I'll just drop a little bit because this area is getting a bit hot. I don't think the greens, well, we'll try the blues. Let's see if we can just give it a little bit of blue just to enhance that sky and the sea a little bit. Okay, I've got to that point and I'll say, well, next thing I'll try a little bit of sharpening, and we do that with the detail panel. Now, there's a little message down here that says for a more accurate preview, yeah, you really have to be at least 100%. Now we can zoom by going down here, and we can select one by clicking on that down arrow, and we can select 100%. And this takes us in to 100%. Now, if I hold my finger on the space bar and click and drag, I can move around the image. So I can have a look at where I want to actually analyse. And I think there's got quite a lot of detail in it. Now there is a little bit of noise. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull a little bit of luminance noise reduction in, just to soften that noise off a little bit. And then I'm going to go to the sharpening. Now my, if you like, way of sharpening is I like to sharpen a lot and then mask it out. And I'll show you what I mean by that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the sharpener over to around 70-ish. And that, I'll just pull it down and back. And you may not be able to see it very well on this recording screen, but that's given me quite a lot of sharpening. And then what I can do is mask it out. And if I hold the Alt key down and click on the masking slider and drag, initially it masks everything out. But as I drag towards the right, you'll see that it starts bringing back. Now what's happening here is that anywhere that's black on this mask is not being sharpened. So I don't really want to sharpen the sea too much, but I really would like to get some good sharpening around all those high contrast edges. And when I get to the point that I'm happy with, I'll let go. Now to bring it back to full screen, to fit on screen, what I'll do is I'll double click on the hand tool up there. And that brings it back to me fit on screen. Now let's have a quick look at before and after, and we do that down here. We've got some view options here, and with this one it cycles between some before and after views. So I'm going to click on the white icon here, that little symbol, and it shows me a before and after, and I'm quite impressed with that. I think you can see that with that image we've come in a really good direction. Now we did all this very quickly, just using a few sliders. I'll go back to the basic panel and then I'll click Done. Now you can see the thumbnail has been updated. However, the original file hasn't been changed. All the Camera Raw has done is save out a set of instructions into a separate file. Now think of it like the instruction file is over the top of the original image, a bit like a filter. Now these little icons at the top corner of the thumbnail here tell you that edits have been done. Now the great thing about this non-destructive approach is that we can always undo or modify our edits, and because we've never affected the original image. Now if I right click on the thumbnail again and open in Camera Raw, you see that Camera Raw opens up again with all our sliders as they were before we left. So we can either do some modifications or we can throw them away and start again. We can zero all the sliders. Now as I said earlier, this is the original file plus a set of instructions. So I can view it okay in Photoshop here, but what about if I want to send it to somebody else, if I want to share this image? Now what you can do is go down to Save Image and you can save the image out as a new JPEG image with all your adjustments included, or another format. Or you could click on the Open Image button to open the image in Photoshop to do some more work on it. Now here I have opened the image from Bridge into Camera Raw. Now you can use Camera Raw on any image that you have open in Photoshop because you can apply Camera Raw as a filter. So let me just open this image in Photoshop now just to show you that. Okay, we've now got an image, it could be any image, opened up in Photoshop. And if we want to use Camera Raw now, we can go to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. So really you can edit any image in Camera Raw like JPEGs. However, the big benefit is in processing RAW files. Processing JPEG images, you get the advantage of a simpler workflow, but as the image has already been processed and compressed by the camera, you'll not have the same latitude to rescue blown highlights and blocked out shadows as you have with a RAW file. Well, that's it for this video. I do hope you liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up or leave a comment under the video. Or please share it with a friend or two. Don't forget to check out the More area under the video for the link to any download files or free ebooks. And please click the subscribe button at the end of the video so when I upload a new video, you are the first to know. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.